home is an invasion. You're a colonizer, not an expat. Wow. Gringo, go home.
They attacked American looking people in restaurants, broke windows,
Yeah.
like violence. They wanted to get at them.
I grew up in New York, LA.
Atlanta, Georgia.
Crime is wholly dependent on socioeconomic.
The Mexicans are protesting, holding up their signs saying, "Hey, gringo, get the f out of here," SA.
Mexicans that are in Mexico are literally coming after people who are claiming to be nomads. You know, all those boomers who have now retired and are looking for a cheaper place to live.
Man. Was that a shot? Your new home is an invasion. You're a colonizer, not an expat. Wow. Pay taxes, speak Spanish, use pesos, or get out of here. Man. Mexico no is cheap. Well, I gotta tell you guys what is happening here. The same thing that happened in Colombia is happening in Mexico, right? Us being there are driving up the prices, and I even seen some signs that said use pesos and speak Spanish or get out, right? What's happening is guys are out there using US dollars. They're traveling, they're tourists. What I think is happening is this. I think this is a case of they're not expats. They may be passport bros, just going there, using their coin, taking advantage of the system, like guys usually do when they go to Mexican for cheap bucks. That could be happening. It's extremely cheap in Mexico. They don't make anywhere near what they make in other places. And it's right there, right below the border, right? But they still not making a bank like that. So if you look at some of the money they're making, I see one lady says she's living on like 5,000, I forgot the number, but it was a low amount, like $50 a day. No, I said it wrong. Scratch that out. It wasn't $50 a day, but like $10 or $5 or something like that. $10 a week. Crazy numbers. That's not enough for us. That's what a latte for us. And guys are there making a crazy amount of money and spending recklessly. And what does that do? Drives up prices. And that's why they're mad. Also, it has something to do with Donald Trump as well. Because of gentrification. See, they're driving up rents. Urge control of rents. Gringo, go home. They're doing that because those are the people driving up the prices. Man. Wow. Man, that'd be something if a father walked by. Killer Gringo. Oh man, this is getting out of hand. Wow. Wow. Oh, his foreigners in there too. Don't go outside. Get that man in the back. I think I'll be find another country to go to. Seriously. Wow. Wow. Yeah, they
Aleatorio que nos encontramos en
man.
la calle, ¿no? Eso es todo.
Go home. No choice.
To self-deport themselves out of Mexico. Yes, you heard me right. The Mexicans are saying, hey, Americans, it's time to go home. Deport yourself out of our country. Protesters took to the streets in
Wow.
Mexico City saying, no more gringos, stop stealing our land, demanding that local leaders regulate tourism and have stricter housing laws, saying that Americans cannot come in and buy up all the property there. Protesters soon became violent as they started smashing storefronts, looting stores, and harassing and screaming at tourists that are simply walking on the streets, telling them to go home. During 2020, a lot of Americans moved to Mexico because they could live cheaply there and they could continue to work in their American-based companies, so they were living large. Rent in the past 5 years has increased by 47%, and the people in Mexico are done with it. They're saying, we have had a mass invasion of Americans. They're taking over our land. They're bringing their culture here, and we're done.
47%.
So Americans need to deport themselves out of Mexico. Sounds kind of familiar, right? We had a mass invasion here. Now we're trying to send people out of our country. Mexico's doing the same thing, saying, Americans, it's time for you to go home. We want our land back. Let me know your thoughts on this one.
Oh no. It has nothing to do with wanting the land back. We're out there raising these prices, and I saw people say it's white people, but I'm sure maybe one or two black people are there too. That's what we do. We're out there spending and not caring, especially a digital nomad. I'm imagining a guy working at a cafe and buying 7 coffees because he wants to work there the whole time. He's making $30 to $50 an hour. Just handing him the card, letting him swipe it through. The guy's swiping through extra charges sometimes. I can imagine. That's going to raise the rates everywhere. So not only the rents, every establishment they go in raises the prices. People get tired of it. I kind of understand why they're doing that. It's not just passport bros. It's any person that wants to be a digital nomad. They're expats. All kinds are going there. And they're saying, no mas.
Citizens protested yesterday against gentrification in Mexico, against Americans, Canadians, anybody who is remote working in Mexico. Thousands protest. There's even video if you search Mexican gentrification protests. They attacked American-looking people in restaurants, broke windows,
Yeah.
like violence. They wanted to get at them, and it's because they're making Mexico expensive, and they're getting blamed for making Mexico expensive because they go around saying Mexico's cheap, come here.
Mm-hmm.
But by doing so, rents and everything else have gone up in Mexico, making it really hard for the citizens. I keep trying to explain that the economy there is on shaky ground. There is no
Yeah, you know what's wild is that that's not happening in other places. That's not happening in the Philippines. That's not happening in Thailand. And you have to imagine it's right there on the US border. How many people are crossing across that border? I'm sure tons. I'm just imagining if 10,000, because they said around the pandemic. So if in 2020, everybody said, I'm out of here, let's go to Mexico. They brought their children, they went to schools. Yeah, they raised the school prices too. Ugh, because they brought the American children down there. Yeah, Americans went down there and raised everyone's entire life. I get it.
work. The youth don't have work. And like you see here, eventually they hit a boiling point and they start to protest about it. And that's what's happening in Mexico right now. Super interesting to keep an eye on this. If I see more, I'll let you know.
Man.
Documentary that Channel 5 did about gentrification in Mexico City, and it was very hard for me to finish it.
This rapid mass influx of what are called digital nomads to Mexico City has overwhelmed the housing market there to such a degree that native-born Mexicans cannot feasibly live there on a standard salary.
Look past the charming cafes, flashy apartments, and you'll see this capital city for what it's becoming, a refuge for migrants.
I grew up in New York, LA,
Atlanta, Georgia.
But some of the Mexican people in this documentary said something that I think needs to be addressed.
Porque se ve obligada a mejorar su respuesta.
Y la verdad yo creo que eso es bueno.
No se ve ni basura, hay más policías caminando, güey. En Iztapalapa cuando ves un puto puerco caminando entre...
Like, your neighborhoods don't have to be gentrified in order for it to become safe. Crime is wholly dependent on socioeconomic factors. People do not burglarize or rob people for fun. Like, they do it because they have to. And so what you will typically see is that the bigger the gap of rich and poor in a certain country or city, then you will have a higher crime rate. This is static across every country. And so when you see the safest countries in the world, the rich and poor gap is very small. So society is typically more egalitarian when it comes to how much money people earn. Usually it's mostly rich people. But even in a lot of societies where wealth distribution is more equal, so let's say the richest person is not like that rich, and there's a bigger middle class, and the amount of poor people are smaller, but there are better social services in the country, crime will be small. The reason why gentrification means less crime is not because there are more police officers in the neighborhood. Police do not suppress crime whatsoever. And what's crazy is that the police officers are there because there are more white people and more foreigners to protect. So what they're essentially conveying is that the safety of the average Mexican person is not as important as foreigners. And this directly plays into gentrification. Because once again, the needs of foreigners and their
means more money needs to be spent. Yeah.
We don't only see this in terms of safety. Gentrification is a huge contributor to just cultural death. We have seen this in places like Hawaii, for example.
Yeah.
The percentage of Hawaiians who actually speak
drove
Hawaiian
up.
is dwindling due to gentrification. It's a culture that overwhelmingly prioritizes serving tourists and serving gentrifiers, that the language is devalued. And we're seeing that in Mexico City as well. Because as we've seen in the documentary, there are classes, billboards, so many things now that are in English, accommodating these foreigners because they don't learn Spanish. Mind you, Spanish is one of the easiest languages to learn as an English speaker. And this will be the downfall of culture in Mexico City, really. And what's crazy to me is if you go into the comments, you will see how racist the average digital nomad or foreigner in Mexico City is. Because they always want to rationalize them changing the entire landscape of the country by talking about how Mexican people illegally immigrate and all this to the US. When, mind you, the instability in Mexico and Central America is due to US intervention. Always failing to point out that 1/5 of the US's working population is made up of undocumented and documented immigrants. The country would not run without them. And they pay an exorbitant amount of taxes in the United States as well. Digital nomads do not pay taxes in the countries that they're living in, unless the country specifically makes a rule in which they're taxed. But they overwhelmingly do not pay taxes. Not only that, but they typically live in a way that is in alignment with how they lived in the United States. And this is a major problem because they are not acclimating properly to the culture.
That's the thing. She said, in a way, like they're in the US. It's easier to live better. I'm sure they're living better. They're going to cafes, working, and spending. Woo! Could you imagine? Imagine an internet cafe, right? They're probably starting internet cafes down there, and it's booming. And they're charging crazy rents to rent a location, right? I'm talking about a place in an internet cafe. I'm sure guys are going, oh, best internet, come here. Coffees, $5. People are buying them. A Mexican can't afford a $5 coffee. It's different. Like, and I see why the Philippines doesn't suffer because things over here are expensive already. In Thailand too. I'm talking about like things like Starbucks. It's not too far from American prices. I would have to look up Mexico. I'm sure it's the same. But still, I'm making a point here. Mexico is struggling because we raise things. We can't help it. We want what we want. But it's wild because we don't do it in every culture. It seems to happen a lot in the Spanish countries. And you have to think of the amount, right? Because I haven't had a chance to go to Mexico. I would have loved to go. But now.
And what that means is living within the means that the local population lives in. And so the documentary is good, but I think it's a little bit PC. Yes, landlords are the problem. Governments are the problem who don't regulate these things. But let's not take out the responsibility of a lot of these people who go to these countries and see it and use it as a playground without any sort of means to integrate into the local communities or to live how locals live. Gentrification will never be a good thing.
Karma is a bitch, ain't it? Y'all hear what's going on in Mexico right now? It don't get no better. So while liberals in America are saying, Viva la Mexico, and waving the Mexican flags, protesting with illegal immigrants to keep them here, you know what's going on in Mexico right now? The Mexicans are protesting, holding up their signs saying, hey, gringo, get the out of here, SA. Get the out of Mexico, puto. The Mexicans are kicking white liberals out of Mexico, while the ones here are protesting to keep Mexicans here. What the fuck? So the reason for this is liberal Americans America up, their beautiful California up, and their up blue cities.
Dude, you gotta stop cursing.
And then they dip out, sell their move to Mexico, right, to live cheaper. Yet they get all the high-paying jobs in Mexico, according to the Mexicans. So they move in, everything goes up because of the high traffic of foreign people, and then they go there with their United States American entitlement for the liberals. They go to Rome and do what liberal Americans do. Because they don't know, when you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do.
Dude, you gotta stop cursing.
So they go to Mexico with their entitlement, right? And then they work from home, work on their computer, and then they live this lavish lifestyle. Because when you go there with your United States dollar, you can buy a mansion for pennies on the dollar. So now because of that, everything, all the prices are going up, cost of living is going up. They're over there Mexico, and the Mexicans have had enough. So they're over here trying to say Viva la Mexico, and then Mexicans are over there saying, get the out of here, puto, go back to America, go fight in America, we don't want you here. Hell yeah. The only thing they need to realize is here they'll just talk, but in Mexico the Mexicans will actually make them disappear. So they look around and find out. So let's get ready for them.
Dude, you gotta stop cursing.
Liberals to march back here in droves because the Mexicans are kicking their asses out of Mexico. And that's just news for you.
Finally.
Mexico tearing white people's asses up right now? If you don't believe me, you can go look it up. But the Mexicans that are in Mexico are literally coming after people who are claiming to be nomads. You know, all those boomers who have now retired and are looking for a cheaper place to live with their retirement. They decided to go to Mexico and try to gentrify Mexico. And they said, no, sir, no, ma'am. The Mexican people are going through their cities where they've built all these places of shops and restaurants, and they are breaking everything. They are blaming this boomer generation and these digital nomads for the reasons why the price of living is going up. They say that over the last 5 years, just rent alone has gone up 43% because of them. They said that because of them, they are now having to choose between groceries, rent, and electricity. And they didn't waste no time telling them, get the out. They even said they was coming on their beaches telling them that their mariachi bands can't play their music. The nerve. That's a cultural thing that's been going on there forever. Why would you think you get to go to someone else's country and tell them what to do? There was even one of the protesters who was quoted stating, this is how colonialism works, and we're going to put a stop to it before it ever even happens, honey. And they don't look like they're joking around, busting windows straight out, honey.
No longer wants Americans in Mexico, and the reason why is because of this process called gentrification. And what that means is basically you have wealthier people moving into a neighborhood or moving into a city, and these wealthier people are okay because they are paying these cheaper prices. However, for the locals, now everything is going up. The cost of everything is going up because of the wealthier individuals moving into their neighborhood, and they don't want that. But also, the character changes. You know, you see Americans, we have this American ideology of being able to speak freely and to change things when we don't like it. So these Americans are going to Mexico with these same ideologies, and they're trying to change that in Mexico. And the Mexicans are like, yeah, I don't like this. I don't like being able to not afford going out there and getting my my cheap tacos and my cheap beer and my, massive amount of medication that is open, and I can't afford it now. They're not liking that, so they want Americans out. Isn't that crazy? Because in America, when we get tired of people burning our flag and protesting, looting, and basically taking our benefits and doing all that stuff, when we get tired of that, what happens here? Oh yeah, the Democrats basically get mad and tell their gangsters to go into the street and do dangerous things to our federal law enforcement agencies. So I don't know. Maybe I think the thing that's happening in Mexico is actually a good thing, because maybe it will teach some people a lesson. I don't know. But anyway, just crazy where we're at in this world.
It's always laughable to me that white Americans never think that they're gentrifying a place, but that their presence makes the place better versus worse. And in the conversation around the white Americans and the bulk of Americans that are indeed gentrifying Mexico City, people protesting you being there is not at all the same as immigrant folks, migrant folks being in the United States of America. Because let's start with the very real fact that when people immigrate into the United States, they do more with trying to assimilate, to be American, versus trying to make you assimilate into their culture. When the fun part about it is there is no such thing as quote unquote American culture, because the identity of the United States of America in and of itself is stolen. Everything from its food to its music to its people are bagged, borrowed, and stolen. I don't have any sympathy for people that have so much privilege that they can choose a place in which they're going to immigrate to live, be either hosted by their job or self-funded by their work, and also refuse to learn the language, eat the food, and complain about the overall cultural identity of the place, when you can just, as I always say, stay your ass home.
We don't want any more migrants in our country. This is a statement Claudia Sheinbaum gave right after she closed the border between Mexico and Guatemala. The Mexican president said that Mexico will no longer be a passage for migrants crossing the borders from Mexico to the U.S. And that's because the millions of migrants coming from Venezuela and Central America has to cross through Mexico in order to get to the U.S.
Okay, so Mexico closed the damn borders off. Are y'all gonna protest them too? I hear crickets. Y'all go to Mexico and protest them as well, just like y'all did in America? Y'all gonna start riots and all this crazy shit y'all was doing, destroying property and stuff like that? Y'all went to the other countries and protested their Democrats and stuff like that. Go to Mexico and do that. I dare y'all. Come on. I dare y'all. Watch y'all get kicked out. You might get arrested or even killed. Deported back to the U.S. like some dummies. So even Mexico got the goddamn message. They like, it's too many of y'all. We ain't about to let y'all come through this